Have you ever heard the incredible legend of the sleepers of Providence Creek? The young believers who were said to have slept in a mountain cave for over 3 centuries. For generations, it was a piece of Appalachian folklore, a whisper among the hills. But what if this story, a testament to unwavering faith, could be proven true by modern science, centuries after it supposedly took place? The journey to an answer began not in a dusty library, but on a rugged mountainside in West Virginia. In 1963, a team of geologists and archaeologists from Georgetown University, led by Dr. Evelyn Reed, was surveying the Allegheny Mountains for historical settlements. Following old maps and local legends, they stumbled upon a secluded cave near the ruins of a long-forgotten town, once known as Providence Creek. What they found inside would challenge our understanding of history and faith. The cave was remarkable. As Dr. Reed and her team conducted their research, they made a series of astonishing discoveries. The entrance to the cave faced a specific direction, allowing sunlight to enter in a peculiar way. Analysis revealed that the morning sun would slant into the cave from the right, illuminating the interior without directly striking a central resting place. As the sun set in the afternoon, its rays would shift to the left, briefly casting a gentle glow into the chamber before disappearing. This natural phenomenon perfectly matched the descriptions in the old legend, which claimed the sleepers were turned by a divine hand to be protected from the sun's direct rays. This discovery was presented as a remarkable coincidence by some, but it was just the beginning. The team found 8 burial sites carved into the rock. 7 contained the perfectly preserved remains of young men, and the 8th, near the entrance, held the skeletal remains of a large dog. The preservation of the bodies was mystifying. They had not been mummified or embalmed, yet they had resisted decay for centuries. Dr. Nasir Al-Khalani, a biochemist collaborating on the project, found the answer in the soil of the cave itself. The earth was unusually rich in certain minerals, including calcium and magnesium, but most importantly, it had trace amounts of uranium. The faint, natural radiation emitted by these elements, alpha, beta, and gamma rays, had created a sterile environment. This low-level radiation had effectively prevented the growth of bacteria and microbes, preserving the bodies from decomposition for over 300 years. The science had, in its own language, confirmed the core of the legend. These individuals had remained untouched by time in this specific cave. The archaeological team also unearthed other artifacts. Within the cave, they found tarnished silver coins bearing the seal of Providence Creek, a settlement that had vanished from records around the late 17th century. They also discovered a simple wooden cross and the remains of a small, reverent structure built over the cave's entrance, suggesting it had once been a site of great importance. These findings, the astronomical alignment of the cave, the unique soil composition, and the historical artifacts provided stunning physical evidence for a story that had long been dismissed as mere myth. Now, let us journey back in time and tell the story of these young men, whose faith led them to that very cave. Part 1. The Story of the 7 Believers. Our story begins in the year 1685, in the isolated mountain settlement of Providence Creek. The town was ruled by a charismatic and tyrannical leader named Silas, who demanded absolute loyalty. Silas had established a cult of personality, forcing the townspeople to worship an idol he called the progenitor, a large, grim statue carved from an ancient oak tree that stood in the center of the town square. Silas claimed to be the sole interpreter of the progenitor's will, and his rule was absolute. He had spies throughout the community, listening for any dissent. Those who refused to bow before the idol were branded as heretics. They were publicly shamed, their property was confiscated, and in the most extreme cases, they were dragged to the town square and executed as a warning to others. The people of Providence Creek lived in a state of constant fear, their lives governed by the whims of a man who had made himself a god. But even in this climate of oppression, a flicker of true faith remained. A small group of 7 young men, born into the town's most prominent families, secretly held to the belief in the one, true, unseen God. Their names were Jacob, Martin, Samuel, Daniel, Caleb, Benjamin, and Liam. They met in secret, often in the dead of night, to read from a forbidden book and pray together, strengthening their faith against the darkness that surrounded them. The turning point came during the annual Harvest Festival, a week-long celebration dedicated to the progenitor. Silas commanded every citizen, young and old, to attend the grand ceremony in the town square. Lavish decorations were hung, and a great feast was prepared. The climax of the festival was the Pledge of Fealty, where every person was required to kneel before the oak idol and offer a sacrifice. Jacob, Martin, and the others were filled with dread. Their consciences would not allow them to participate in such blasphemy. On the day of the ceremony, as the townspeople gathered, chanting praises to the idol, the 7 young men stood together, silent and resolute. When it was their turn, Silas, seated on a high throne beside the statue, motioned for them to approach. One by one, they refused to kneel. Jacob, acting as their spokesman, stepped forward. His voice, though trembling, was clear. "We worship only the Creator of the heavens and the earth," he declared. "We will never bow to an idol of wood, for that would be a great falsehood." A shocked silence fell over the crowd. Silas's face contorted with rage. Such open defiance was unheard of. Jacob's father, a high-ranking official in Silas's council, rushed forward and pleaded with his son to recant. "Jacob, what are you doing?" he hissed, his face pale with fear. "Think of your family, just kneel. It is only a gesture." But Jacob stood firm. "Father, I cannot betray what I know to be true, not even for you." Enraged, Silas ordered his guards to seize the young men. He gave them an ultimatum. They had until the next morning to renounce their faith and bow to the progenitor, or they would be made a public example. The 7 were stripped of their fine clothes, and Silas declared that their families would be shamed for raising such traitors. That night, the 7 friends met one last time. They knew they could not stay in Providence Creek. Their choice was clear: abandon their homes and worldly possessions to save their faith, or stay and face certain death. They decided to flee. As they prepared to leave under the cover of darkness, a loyal dog named Buddy, who had belonged to Samuel, refused to leave their side. He would be their 8th companion. They gathered what little food they could carry and slipped out of the town, making their way into the dense, untamed wilderness of the Allegheny Mountains. They walked for hours, their hearts heavy but their resolve unbroken. They spoke of the injustice they had witnessed and strengthened each other's spirits, praying for God's guidance. As dawn approached, they stumbled upon the mouth of a deep, secluded cave. It seemed like a sanctuary, a place of refuge provided by God Himself. Exhausted from their journey, they entered the dark, cool interior. With Buddy curled up at the entrance, as if to stand guard, the 7 young men prayed together one last time. They placed their trust entirely in God, asking Him to protect them from the evil of Silas and his followers. Then, a profound and supernatural peace settled over them, and one by one, they fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. Part 2. An Awakening. When Jacob opened his eyes, the cave was filled with a soft, ambient light. He felt rested, as if he had only slept for a few hours. He looked at his companions, who were beginning to stir. "How long have we slept?" Martin asked, stretching his limbs. "It feels like a day, perhaps a little more," Daniel replied, looking towards the cave entrance. "The sun is high. Silas and his men must have given up their search for us by now." Their hunger had become intense. They pooled the few old silver coins they had left. Jacob, being the most courageous, volunteered to go back towards Providence Creek to buy food. He disguised himself with a tattered cloak, pulling the hood low over his face. "Be careful," Samuel warned. "If you are recognized, all is lost." Jacob promised to be cautious and set off, with Buddy trotting alongside him for a short while before returning to the cave. As Jacob descended the mountain, he immediately noticed that something was wrong. The familiar dirt path was gone, replaced by a smooth, black surface he had never seen before. Strange. Metal carriages moved along it at incredible speeds, making loud humming noises. He stared in disbelief, his heart pounding. The world felt utterly alien. He pressed on, his confusion growing with every step. The forest seemed different, the trees taller and older. When he finally reached the location where Providence Creek should have been, it was gone. In its place stood a bustling modern city, with tall buildings made of glass and steel, and streets teeming with people in bizarre, colorful clothing. A sign at the edge of the city read, "Welcome to New Hope Est, 1948. Completely bewildered, Jacob wandered through the streets, a stranger in a strange land. He eventually found a grocery store. The sights and smells inside overwhelmed him. He cautiously approached the counter, selected some bread and cheese, and handed the cashier one of his silver coins. The young cashier looked at the coin, then at Jacob's worn, old-fashioned clothes, with a puzzled expression. "What is this, sir? Is this some kind of joke?" "It is money," Jacob said, his voice barely a whisper. "It is all I have." The cashier called his manager, who examined the coin with great interest. "I have never seen anything like this," the manager said. "The seal is ancient. This looks like something from a museum." A crowd began to gather. Jacob's strange appearance and the antique coin drew suspicion. Fearing he was a thief or a madman, someone called the local sheriff. Sheriff Miller arrived and listened patiently to the story. He saw the genuine fear and confusion in Jacob's eyes. He didn't believe in magic, but he knew something was not right. He took Jacob and the coin to the office of the town's mayor, a thoughtful man named Mayor Thompson, who was also the local historian. Mayor Thompson listened intently as Jacob recounted his story of Providence Creek, the tyrannical Silas, the worship of the progenitor, and his flight with 6 friends into a mountain cave. At first, the story seemed impossible, but then the mayor looked closely at the coin. He recognized the seal from old colonial records. It was the mark of the lost settlement of Providence Creek, a fanatical community that had mysteriously vanished in the late 17th century. Local legends spoke of 7 young men who had defied the leader and fled into the mountains, never to be seen again. They were known in folklore as the Lost Believers. "It can't be," the mayor whispered, his eyes wide with awe. "Son, what year do you think it is?" "It is the year of our Lord, 1685, Jacob replied earnestly. Mayor Thompson took a deep breath. "It is the year 2024, he said gently. "You and your friends. You have been asleep for 339 years. Conclusion: the legacy of faith. The news was impossible to comprehend, yet it was the only explanation. Jacob, overwhelmed, begged the mayor and the sheriff to come with him to the cave to prove he was telling the truth. Intrigued and moved by his sincerity, they assembled a small group and followed Jacob back up the mountain. When they arrived at the cave, they found everything, just as Jacob had described. His 6 companions were still there, awake now, and worried about his long absence. Their faithful dog, Buddy, whose skeleton lay peacefully at the entrance, had seemingly guarded them to the very end. The people from New Hope stared in stunned silence. Before them stood 7 men, dressed in the garb of the 17th century, untouched by time. It was a miracle. The story of the sleepers of Providence Creek spread like wildfire. It was a powerful testament to the endurance of faith against tyranny. The 7 young men, having fulfilled their purpose, understood that their time in the world was over. Their journey had been a sign from God, a sign of His power over time and life, and a confirmation of the promise of resurrection. Surrounded by the new generation of believers in the city of New Hope, they peacefully laid down one last time in the cave, and their souls departed to their Creator. In their memory, the people of New Hope built a beautiful chapel near the cave. It did not become a place to worship the sleepers, but a place to remember their unwavering faith and the incredible miracle that had unfolded in their small Appalachian town. Their story, once a forgotten legend, was now a cherished history, a profound reminder that even in the deepest darkness, the light of faith can endure through the ages, and that with God, nothing is impossible.